Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me for another video. So I am actually refilming the intro because I wanted to add a couple of things in. So I just wanted to put in there, while I was editing over my video, I noticed that I came across a little bit, not like aggressive, but I noticed that I said a few times I argued a lot with the NHS staff and things like that. Now I just want to put out there that I'm not ungrateful in any way, and I didn't want to be, but I was in such a position when I saw them that I was so angry, in pain and upset, and I was exhausted that I was just getting frustrated. I felt like nobody was listening to me, and I really needed the help that I didn't feel like at that point I was getting. Unfortunately, it has taken this long to get some help with one of the issues I'm going to be talking about, but thankfully the other issue is being dealt with pretty promptly, and I just want to put it out there. I am so grateful for everyone that has helped me, and I know that nothing that I have or that I'm dealing with is life-threatening. One of them is life-affecting, but it's not life-threatening, and I'm not seriously ill. So I just want to put that out there, and I know that I'm not, but to me this is a big deal because, as I say, I've always been fit and healthy, and to have all of this at one go, it's a bit of a hit in the face, shall we say. So I really hope you like this video. I'm going to be uploading it into two separate videos because it is almost an hour long, and this intro is already twice as long as what the other one was. But yeah, so I really hope you enjoy this video. Okay, so part of the reason why I haven't been uploading a lot of videos, especially over the last 2 weeks, is partly down to this. So obviously I'll get into it, but a lot of the issues are the fact that I'm not really sleeping very well, and during the day that's making me feel very tired, exhausted. You know, there's a lot of things that I can't be bothered to do. I just haven't got the energy, and I'm not sleeping because of pain, discomfort, feeling sick, and just everything in general. So I'll get into it and hopefully explain it so you guys have a better understanding of not only what is going on, but actually about me, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with 2017 because that's when everything started going on. So for about, I want to say about 3 or 4 months, I can't quite remember how long it was, but for about 3 or 4 months before October, I started experiencing a lot of discomfort in my stomach sort of area. So it would sort of travel. So 1 minute it'd be like the top of my stomach, and then it would sort of filter around to the back, and then it would be in like my lower stomach, and yeah, so it would just spread everywhere. And the main things that were going on at the time was I was bloating out really badly after I'd eaten, even if it was just like a yogurt or something simple like that. I started bloating out really badly. Well, not really badly at this point, but I was bloating out enough to look like I've just eaten 2 dinners. I was feeling really sick, and I was getting really bad cramps. So, you know, I didn't really think a lot of it. I thought maybe it's my monthlies and it's just affecting me a bit more, because I've always suffered with them. I've always been on medication to help with cramps and things like that. So I thought maybe it's just, you know, my body getting ready or finishing or whatever. So I sort of ignored it. But when September came, the cramping started getting a lot worse. So I thought, and it felt a little bit like it was burning, in like a burning sort of sensation. So I used to drink glasses of milk, which used to actually settle it. So I thought, okay, maybe it's like acid reflux or something like that. But then when October came, to be precise, October the 12th, I woke up one morning and I had the worst fever. I had a really high temperature. I was sweating. I was clammy as well. I was, you know, bright red, but I was shivering, had all the symptoms of a fever. So I went to my GP's, and it was a bit frustrating because it was a sit and wait appointment. So instead of an emergency appointment for my doctor surgery, we have a normal appointment which you like pre-book, and then you get an emergency appointment where you get to see someone on that day, but you come back for the appointment. And then you've got like a sit and wait appointment, which is basically you sit there. It can be for like up to an hour, and you'll just get straight in with whoever's available next, pretty much. So I managed to get that appointment, and I was feeling really sick. I thought I was going to be sick. Luckily I wasn't, but I got into the GP, and long story short, she felt my stomach. She checked my eyes to check if I was jaundiced, which obviously luckily I wasn't. And like I said, she felt my stomach. I was very bloated. I was extremely tender. especially around the right side. So she said, okay, I think you've got appendicitis, I'm sending you up to A&E. So I was like, you know, perfect, just what I want. Never been in hospital with something as severe as that. I've never been in that much pain and discomfort. I've never been that ill, so it started freaking me out a little bit, and I've never been sent to A&E by my doctor either, so at this point my head was like everywhere. So we got up to A&E and I saw a couple of doctors beforehand. I think there was like an A&E doctor, and then I saw a surgical doctor. So the A&E doctor, obviously she done the normal routine. She done bloods, she done urine samples, all that sort of stuff. And it came back to say that your infection and inflammatory markers were high. So that's basically, they were convinced at that point it was appendicitis, so they was going to admit me, or they did admit me to have them out, which I was like, oh my god, like, I don't like, at that point I didn't like the thought of surgery. It freaked the hell out of me. I really started panicking. My dad was sitting there with me because my mum had just finished work, she'd just gone home to get changed. And as soon as she said that, as soon as she walked off, I just burst out crying to my dad, because I was like, my anxiety is so bad now. I felt worse when I got here, and now I feel 10 times more worse because I really don't want this. Anyway, so they took me to the ward. They said, we'll definitely get you in before 10 o'clock tonight because we want them out. Because you've had a couple of months of pain. They reckon it, or they thought it was a grumbling appendix, which is worse, because that means your appendix could basically burst at any point. And so I got up to the ward, and then the doctor came back to me and he said, I'd had a lot of painkillers and fluids by this point, and he said, okay, we're 50-50 on whether it is appendicitis now, we're not 100% sure. And I sort of looked at him, and at this point my mum was with me, and she sort of looked at him, we were just like, well, how come, you know, like my bloods are showing up, I was in agony. But at this point, because of the painkillers, I was just laying really casually on the bed talking to my mum, and he said, partly because of the way you're laying even now, it doesn't show me that you have, but we still want to keep you in tonight to see how you go, so we may not operate now. So I was like, oh, okay. So they kept me in overnight, and then in the morning at about 10 a.m, so it's about 12 hours later, they came down for me and they said, okay, we're taking you down to surgery. So I was like, oh, okay. It kind of helped me, the fact that they just turned up and I didn't have any warning, because then that way in the morning all I was thinking about was, oh, I might be going home, not about surgery. So I didn't have that time to process it, which would have made me feel a lot worse. So they took me down, I went into surgery, and it turned out that actually my appendix were perfectly fine, they were healthy, but they removed them anyway to save, you know, any future issues with them. And it actually turned out that I had a cyst on my right ovary. It wasn't a very big one, but I had a cyst on my ovary, and I actually had one that had ruptured, which was what caused me the pain and the fever. And I had what they call a chocolate cyst, and I had a lot of blood and fluid in the right side of my pelvis. So that was what caused it. They don't know how big the cyst was, but they reckon it was big-ish because of the amount of fluid that was there. It's normal to get cysts. Women get cysts every single month. It's part of their, it's part of their like menstruation, whatever you call it, cycle. Pardon me. So it's normal to get cysts. You know, everyone gets them. I probably had them since the day I started. And obviously this one was just bad enough to cause me enough pain. So anyway, they took them out. That was all fine. The day after my surgery, they were going to discharge me, but then my potassium levels dropped. So at this point I thought, oh god, why have, you know, I don't even really know what any of that means, but they've dropped, that's not going to be good. So they kept me in for one more night to give me supplements, and then I went home. So that was the October. The November came, and I was pretty much in the same situation. It was about 3 to 5 weeks, I want to say more 5 weeks after my surgery. And I got a lot of pain come on all of a sudden. Again, I was bloating, all the same symptoms came back. And because I'd had this surgery, I started thinking, oh, I hope I haven't picked up an infection or something like that. So we went straight up to A&E, because they said if you get any symptoms like that, basically just go straight up there. So we went up there, and I was sort of fast-tracked in because I'd had surgery within the last 6 to 8 weeks. So they managed to get me in to be seen quick. And I saw this junior doctor, and he, again, done the bloods, urine sample, all of that sort of stuff. They hooked me up to some fluids because I was really, really dehydrated again. And he said, okay, you've got a water infection, we're just going to send you home with some antibiotics. So I thought, I'm in this much pain, a water infection isn't going to cause me this much pain. So I've started overthinking it, thinking, oh, well, you know, I had a cyst rupture last time, that amount of fluid, and I'm in the same amount of pain. I wasn't saying that it was another cyst, but I just thought the pain isn't normal just for a water infection. And I didn't have water infection symptoms, which are usually like burning when you go to the toilet, pain, discomfort, all of that sort of stuff. They took my observations, which are basically your blood pressure, your heart rate, your temperature. My temperature was slightly high. I think it was 37.2. I think it was 37 point something, but it wasn't extremely high. It was like borderline. And my heart rate was 150 something. Now that is really, really high. Your blood pressure should be between 50 and 80 beats per minute, and mine was 158, so mine was extremely high. And I saw this other A&E doctor because where I had she was a gynae doctor, because I had the cyst a month beforehand. They wanted a gynae doctor just to check me out, just to make sure everything was fine. And she said to me everything was fine, she couldn't feel anything abnormal, she couldn't see anything abnormal other than a little bit of bloating and a little bit of tenderness, which she said was normal considering I'd only had surgery about 5 weeks before. It's still a little bit normal to get a bit of tenderness. She said, but your heart rate is way too high, there is no way I am happy with sending you home. So I stayed in for another night. Lucky me, I got admitted again for the second time in 2 months. And they said they reckoned it was basically just another cyst that was causing the pain. So they went along with my treatment as just fluids and painkillers overnight because I was severely dehydrated again, as well, as I mentioned. And then the day after, they sent me home. That was that. The pain had subsided and I wasn't as dehydrated. So that was that. And then in the December, I had pretty much some bad news. I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to and it's not relevant, but it caused me a hell of a lot of stress and worry and upset and everything else. And with that happened, or the issue that had happened, plus the past 2 hospital trips, I was still in discomfort and pain from after being discharged the second time. So I was still in a lot of discomfort and pain and I didn't know what was going on. So there was a lot of stress at the time. So I ended up back up the hospital because I had, again, same symptoms, sickness, nausea, bloating. But that wasn't the reason I was admitted this time. They were just symptoms that were going on. And then there was one night I was at home and I was really, really bad, but I weren't going to go up the hospital just because I thought, again, it's just more pain, it's just another fever, it's going to subside, it'll be fine. And that night I ended up throwing up. But one occasion that I did throw up, it was coffee ground looking vomit. So mum rang 111 because she was really concerned, and it was quite a lot as well. And they said, basically, long story short, you need to get yourself up to A&E immediately, you're basically throwing up dry blood. So as soon as they said that to me on the phone, I've started freaking the hell out because obviously it is not normal to throw up blood. Especially as much as what I did. Ended up going up to A&E. They saw me. I didn't have any pain at this point, which was bizarre. I had a little bit of a temperature, but nothing that had been as high before. And I saw an A&E doctor and she said, okay, we've done your bloods. One blood test in particular came back very, very high, which is called amylase. And the amylase levels, I believe, should be between 90 and 110, and mine were 460 something, so they were extremely high. And basically your amylase is testing the levels of your pancreas, and it turned out that I had contracted, whatever the word is, but I had basically got pancreatitis, what they call pancreatitis, and that's basically where your pancreas inflames for some reason. 2 of the causes, or the only causes that normally happen, are gallstones and alcohol. So they kept me in for, so I'm looking at my list to make sure I've not missed anything out. So I was kept in for 3 days, 4 nights, I believe it was. And by the time, obviously, I'd gone home, the pain had come down, my levels had come down. But yeah, and they was concerned because I hadn't been drinking, and I didn't have gallstones. They done me an ultrasound scan and I was basically clear. So they told me that I was in the rare case, I think it was the 10% of rare cases that have what they call idiopathic pancreatitis, which basically means they don't have a cause for it. It's just unknown. For some reason, your pancreas is fighting against something that there's nothing to fight against, if that makes sense. So anyway, I went home and they sent me for a, what's the word? Like a follow-up. They sent me for a follow-up in about 6 weeks later. This was the beginning of January by this point, about the beginning, middle. And I went to it and they said, okay, we reckon you possibly could have had stomach ulcers, or you could have a stomach ulcer now, because I still had the same symptoms. So they were going to send me for what they call an endoscopy. However, that ended up not going ahead. The endoscopy is where they have a camera down your throat to check like your esophagus and your stomach. And basically they cancelled that because I saw another doctor who then turned around and said it's not going to be stomach ulcers because your stomach is obviously more, I'll stand up, because your stomach is obviously more here, and I was getting it here and in my back. So he said, what I want to do instead, I want to send you for a colonoscopy. So what a colonoscopy is, it's basically camera up your backside to check your bowel, your large and small intestine, just to check for any bowel conditions. Or they were thinking then it could have been IBS, or you know, something like that. There was a lot that happened in them few months. This is where it all started vamping up. Anyway, so I went for that and that all came back clear. That was fine. So between about January, we're in 2018 now, January 2018 and... Okay guys, so my phone actually just went dead, so sorry about probably the little cutting bit that's going to go a bit dodgy. But as I was saying, so that happened, I had my referral in the January 2018, I ended up having the colonoscopy in the March, and everything was fine. So they couldn't really do anything else at that point because they didn't know what was going on. It was just, you know, it was just an unlucky fluke. They were thinking maybe it was something that I'd eaten or that I could be allergic to, or it's just a simple case of IBS. So between the March and the August, the amount of the amount of doctor's appointments, emergency doctor's appointments, and the amount of A&E visits that I had was absolutely ridiculous, just because I was in so much pain and agony every time that I was so desperate for someone to listen to me that I was literally sitting in the hospital crying my eyes out in absolute agony despite taking painkillers, as bloated as a pig, you know, feeling sick. I was throwing up, I had temperatures every other day, and I didn't know what was going on. So we get to August last year, August 2018, so I've got something in my eye. So we get to August 2018 and I had just started my new job at the hospital, coincidentally. I was literally 2 weeks in, and at the end of August, it says 28th of August to be precise, the week of the 28th of August I was down in A&E 3 times in the space of a week. So the Tuesday I went down there, I was actually sent down from work because I work on one of the wards. So they said to me, I started panicking because I tried hiding the pain that I was in, and I tried hiding, you know, the tiredness, and that I'd literally started my job 2 weeks in. So I tried hiding it. I went to go and sit in the staff room for 5 minutes just to have a quick quiet break because it went really quiet, and I just burst out crying because I was in so much agony. I couldn't hold it in. I had taken as many painkillers as I could have that morning, and at this point it was about 10:30 in the morning, and my mentor came in and she said, you know, like, are you okay? And I said, I'm just in agony. She said, fine. She said, if you're in agony, go down to A&E. It's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. You know, things happen. I'll tell the manager, just go down, get yourself sorted. We want you here fit and healthy. So I went down to A&E, and I saw this gynecologist, and at the very first instant that I met her, I did not like her at all. She was very rude, very arrogant, thought, you know, she was the best out of that whole entire place. And long story short, she turned around, she examined me. I had an A&E doctor examine me and said, yeah, there's something not right. You've got a lump on your left side somewhere that you can feel even when you're laying down, and you could vaguely see a tiny little bump on the left side of my stomach. So she said, okay, that's not normal. And then that's when she called the gynecologist down. She was very snooty. She read all my notes. She'd seen my notes like from previous visits, and she said, you're just constipated. Go home, take some laxatives. And I said, but the issue I had with that was that the pain was in my lower left area. It was nowhere near my bowels or anything like that. So, but she was absolutely adamant, and me and Mum had this absolutely massive argument with her, to the point I was crying my eyes out to the end. She offered me some painkillers, and I said, no, I just want to go home. I said, I've had enough. I said, you're not going to deal with me. I said, you're just going to palm me off with painkillers, send me home like everyone else has done. I said, I just want to go home. I said, I would rather take stuff at home. So I went home, and that was that. And I just, you know, I just rested up for the rest of the day, and I didn't do anything. I was had my hot water bottle. I'd taken more painkillers when I got home, la-di-da-di-da. I tried eating some soup because that seemed to be the only thing that I was managing to keep down pretty well. So I had some soup, had some, you know, fluids and all that sort of stuff. A couple of days later, on the Thursday, I went back into A&E with the excruciating pain again. I actually went down after work this time because I thought, I'm not going home again. I didn't go into work on the Wednesday because I was in so much agony, and I rested up, and I was just thankful that they really technically sent me down, because otherwise it would have been awkward. So I went back into work on Thursday, finished my shift, finished at 3 o'clock, and I went down to A&E. I said, right, I'm still in pain, I don't know what's going on. And unfortunately, I then saw the same gynecologist. So we had another bit of a spat with her, because me and Mum being I really desperately wanted a scan, because I didn't know what was going on. I knew there was something going on. I'd had an A&E doctor tell me that there is a lump there. And on this trip, I actually saw 2 gynae doctors. I saw the A&E doctor first, who also said, no, there is something there. I don't know what it is, but there is a lump. It could be a hernia, or it could be something else. So we need to get that checked. She said, so I want you to have a scan. But obviously, because it was sort of late afternoon, early evening, they don't really do scans after a certain time unless you're booked in. So I couldn't just have one. So I would have had to have had one booked, which, you know, I was okay, but I wasn't overly happy, because I knew that they could have fitted me in if it was serious enough, or if they were that concerned. I then saw the first gynae doctor, and she was absolutely lovely. She was such a sweetheart. She felt my stomach as well, and she internally examined me, and she said, you are extremely tender inside and out. You've got a lump there which feels pretty large on your ovary, and your ovary itself feels very tender. She said, there is something there, we need to get you looked at. I will organise painkillers, I will organise some fluids, she said, and we will see what happens. So she went off, and they must have had a shift swap or something, because then this gynae that I'd already had the argument with, she came back, and I saw her again for the second time. So she came in, she said, oh, you know, what's the matter? And I said, I'm still in agony from the other day. I said, when you sent me home saying it's constipation, I said, I've had laxatives. I said, I've been to the toilet. I said, it is certainly not that. I said, I'm telling you now. I said, I've had 2 doctors see me. I said, A&E and a gynae doctor. I said, and they are both concerned. I said, they want me to have a scan. She was adamant she was not going to give me a scan. She was adamant it was just constipation again. You know, she was saying it's spread all across and as far down as your stomach as you possibly can get it, and all of that sort of stuff. We ended up going home again with really strong painkillers this time, and there was another time, I can't remember when, I think this might have been the week before, no, ignore that, scrap that. So that happened, and then I ended up going back less than 24 hours later. I didn't even go into work because, again, I was in agony. I went in at around midday, By work, I did go into work. So there's so much that's happened, I just lose track. So I actually did go into work again. I left half day. I said, I'm so sorry, I cannot stand this pain, I need to go down back again and get sorted. They're like, okay, that's absolutely fine. So I went down there. Long story short, I went to the gynae ambulatory, which is basically like a miniature A&E for gynae issues. It's only like a little department. But anyway, I went down there, and my dad actually came with me this time because he was finishing work and he was on his way home. So he came and sat with me for a little while, but he had to go because he had to do something with my sister or something. So he sat with me whilst I saw this same gynae doctor for the third time in a row, who I'd already had 2 arguments with that week. And she said, right, okay, she said, there's obviously something going on. We need to get, you need to be looked at. And I sort of felt like saying, shut the up, that's why I'm here. If it wasn't for you in the first place sending me home twice, I probably wouldn't be here for a third freaking time. So by this point, I'd lost my rag just even seeing how my blood was boiling. Anyway, so she examined me front and back, behind, which wasn't pleasant either way. And she said the same as the other gynae doctors. She said, yeah, you're definitely tender, there's a lump there, blah de blah de blah, we can't get you in for a scan today, we're gonna have to refer you for one, la di da di da. So it's all the same thing, but by this point my blood pressure was high, my heart rate was high because of the pain, the stress. I was tired, I felt sick, all of that sort of stuff. My temperature was actually fine though. So by this point I was on my own because Dad had to leave, and I was sitting there. This was about 2 o'clock now, so I've been there for a good about 2 to 4 hours, something like that. And I saw the person that was above her, and she basically said, no, we're going to speak to the surgeons because you're saying you're still constipated, even though I'd said I'm not anymore because I've been to the toilet, but they were adamant that it was still that. They rang the surgeons and they basically said, because I had an x-ray and it showed apparently how much was still there, because there was no obstruction, they basically didn't want to know, which is completely fair enough. So I was like, right, okay. So they've said, right, your x-ray's showing that you've still got a lot of business there that needs to leave. And then once you've completely gone, if you've still got the pain in the lump, come back. So I thought, right, I've had enough of this. So I said, so you're sending me home for the 3rd time, despite being sent down twice from work, despite not having probably 48 hours sleep that week, and you know, I'm not eating, I'm visiting, blah blah blah. They said, we're really sorry, there's nothing we can do at the moment, there's no scans available, you know, you're going to have to basically just go home and be done with it. So I was angry. They said, really sorry. I said, well, I'm not happy. I said, because like I said, 3rd time I'm up here in a week, everything had gone on. I said, but if you're going to send me home, I'm not going to change your mind. So they walked off, and then miraculously, as they were getting my discharge papers, a slot for a scan miraculously came through 2 hours later. So in all fairness, I don't know if it was a cancellation or whether they just didn't want to, you know, because I would have ended up going back up there at some point. I just know I would have. So anyway, they said, right, we've managed to get you a scan. It's in 2 hours' time. They said, are you happy to wait? Like, in a really patronising voice. And I just sat there and I thought, I'm going to lose it if I don't, you know, I've got to stay calm. Anyway, so I said, yep, 2 hours is fine. I will happily sit around and wait. So I went out, I got something, I got a sandwich. My boyfriend then came up and sat with me for the rest of it. My mum was on her break, so we sat with her and her friend and went for my scan, and things got serious from there on, because when I went in for my scan, it's an internal exam, so they basically scan you from the inside, and it's when you're in pain and you're swollen and you're tender, etc., it is the most uncomfortablest thing I think I've ever experienced in my life. So I was very apprehensive. I wasn't looking forward to it. I was very nervous. I'd had these scans before, but this was like completely different because of how much pain I was in. So I had it, and the radiologist went very quiet, and because we were chatting beforehand, she was like, so what's your history, you know, this and that, and we was talking about my birthday because it's on Christmas Eve, and she found it amazing, and you know, whatever. And she went very quiet, and I thought, I don't know if that's good or not. And I was watching the screen above, and obviously I didn't really understand any of it. All I saw was an ovary, but with like a black shadow covering half of it. So she went quiet and she went, okay, she said, there's nothing to worry about. She said, but there is a little slight concern, and my heart started going by that point. She said, I think your ovary could be twisting. And by this point, I've inside started panicking my backside off, because I thought, so this is the third time I've been up here, and with a scan, it could actually be something really serious. Because if the ovary, I thought to myself, if the ovary's twisting, you know, I could lose the ovary, it could have so many complications. The doctor again with my boyfriend, and she said, okay, she said, I've spoken to the surgeons and they want to admit you tonight for surgery, emergency surgery, because we think your ovary is actually twisted. I got admitted down onto the ward, planning for emergency surgery. The anaesthetist came down to see me and they said, okay, when did you last eat? I said 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They said, okay, we're going to try and get you in for 8, 9 o'clock. They said, don't drink anything else either, because it has to be 6 hours free, basically nil by mouth, which means you can't eat or drink. So they said, we'll get you in before 10 o'clock. Again, that must be like the cut-off point, because they said that to me last time. And they said, we'll get you in before 10 o'clock unless any emergencies come through. And unfortunately, it was my luck that an emergency cesarean twins came in. So obviously that took priority, which, you know, was understandable. But I was laying there, I was in so much discomfort and pain. My dad had actually stayed with me till 10 o'clock because he didn't want me to be on my own, and he wanted to know what was going on, and he wanted to go down to the not go down to surgery with me, but make sure I got off okay and that sort of thing. So I waited till the morning, and then again, just like last time, the porter just came down and took me down there. When I fully woke up, my dad was actually there, so it must have been around, I'm not entirely sure what time it would have been, but I know it was late afternoon. And he came in and he said everything was fine, because the doctors that I had seen on that day or the day before, they actually came down and they just said everything was fine. There's no endometrium there, which is an important thing to the later part of this story. They said your ovary wasn't twisting, you actually just had a cyst. But the way they said it, it was just another cyst, you know, all that fuss. It was just a leaking cyst. And I was like, oh, right, okay. By this point, I was half knocked out. My dad then came back because he'd already spoken to the nurse on his way down to see me. She actually said to him that I had a drain inserted. So that just, well, I don't need to say what that is. It's just a drain. And that I actually had a cyst that was 15 centimetres, which is absolutely massive. Normal cysts are about 3 to 5 millimeters or centimeters, I can't remember which one, and this was 15 centimeters. It was humongous, and it had actually started to slightly leak, which is what the black picture on the scan was. And so I had to have a drain, and my dad said this to me. I didn't know this until he'd mentioned it to me. So this whole afternoon I was in and out of consciousness, like falling awake, falling asleep, and this whole time I had a drain. And he said that, and I went, what do you mean I've got a drain? So I've lifted the sheets up and I've got a drain sticking out of me with this bag full of fluid and blood from this cyst that had already started leaking. And it was altogether, it was 150 mils, so that is like humongous, and that was what the lump they could see and feel. So it was actually really serious, and I was told afterwards by the doctor that came around to do the rounds, if you had left it another day, it probably would have, even if you left it later on that day, it would have ruptured and you could have been in a lot more serious trouble. I was discharged the day after, so I was actually in how many days? 2 days for this. So that whole fuss over the week, and I was in and out in 2 days, which is so amazing. Okay guys, so we're going to leave it here for this part of the video. I hope it sort of was interesting to begin with, and I hope I haven't rabbited on too long, and I hope it wasn't too boring. But come back tomorrow and there will definitely be the second part for you guys to watch. See you then. Within the first couple of weeks back to work, I then actually collapsed in work. Hi guys, welcome.